Prof, thanks very much for coming back onto the show. Plenty to talk about when it comes to what the President had to say last night. And I think perhaps let's talk about some of the successes perhaps that government has touted, specifically this 350 Rand grant, that money to be provided for all unemployed South Africans. I mean, that's a win for government, surely.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Yeah. Agreed. That's a win, Paul. That is good for the people, really. It doesn't matter how big it might sound. But I can hear somebody say, wasn't there another way in which we could have given it out to the people, but at the same time gotten benefit, especially for the able-bodied, just to do something in their communities to earn that money, to clean the streets, right? To clean the schools, to remove the rubbles, so that we nurture a culture whereby you earn rather than you receive and receive and I receive. As the religious zealots would say, I receive.
Absolutely. So, Prof, you know, one of the other big talking points is, of course, the anticipation for the lockdown to be relaxed come the end of the month, at least in some parts. But lest we forget the insights from the infectious diseases experts who have suggested that the easing of lockdowns should coincide with a trend of lessening infections, for lack of a better term. We're seeing unprecedented daily jumps in new infections, and yet this is the plan. Give us an idea of what you're thinking around perhaps the pressures the President might be feeling, in some ways, which, at least on the face of it, taking him away from following what many South Africans had expected insofar as what science is telling us about how to respond to the pandemic.
Look, we must never underestimate the enormous pressure under which the President is in. There is no doubt that we have got two major interests that are competing, health and economics. And neither comes first nor later. Although, if it's a zero-something, you'd say health comes first. That's fine, right? But in the circumstances, my understanding is, when we went for the level 5 at the outset, the main thinking behind that was we want to contain the spread. That is a fact. But are we ready in terms of the health infrastructure? And the first 3 weeks was intended to prepare the infrastructure. When the Armageddon arrives, it finds us ready. If you take it from that perspective, I think government has done pretty well. And I think we seem to underestimate or less understand the rationale for the first part of the lockdown. Prepare the infrastructure, have the necessary equipment, and then when the West arrives, it finds you ready than wanting, as it happened in many other countries, especially in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what the President had to say last night, you know, that the lockdown has really done its job of buying us more time so that we are prepared. And in the process of buying us that time, saving almost 2,000 lives. That was another positive coming out of the President's address last night, Prof.
Certainly. I mean, scientists would even say we saved about 20 lives, right? By just opting for that route. And then indeed South Africans did well, because especially in the space I find myself, people really made sure that they heeded their call. But in the rural spaces I visited, I found that it's like they live in another world. They less believe, or they just think this is for the bourgeois, it's for the people who travel and fly, as some would even say to me. But I think we have done fairly well. And let's just keep doing it. It's not for the government. It is for ourselves. It is in our interest. Whatever the inconvenience we suffer, but the long-term benefit, we might look back and say it was worthwhile.
All right, let's leave it there, at least for now. Thanks very much for your insights. Certainly appreciated. Professor Lesiba Teffo is a political analyst who often speaks on these issues. And imagine, Michelle, of course, there's going to be a lot of talk still to come throughout the course of the day.